everyone. Thanks for joining me today for this collaborative webinar with Consolidated Planning Group. My name is Natalie Parker. I am the Region 2 Coordinator for Partners Resource Network. We are the Parent Training and Information Center grant funded by the Department of Education, the Office of Special Education. We provide supports to Texas families impacted by disabilities and special health care needs. We have 4 projects here in Texas: PATH, PACT, PIN, and TEAM. And at Partners Resource Network, we strive to empower our Texas families through education. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Allison Schaberg from Consolidated Planning Group to discuss college planning for special needs families.
Thanks so much, Natalie, for having us. It's a pleasure to partner with you in your region. I know we've partnered a lot with Partners Resource Network over the years, and so we're happy to be partnering in your area. So Allison Schaberg here, Consolidated Planning Group. We are happy to be with everyone today. A couple of housekeeping items that I just wanted to go over before we get going. Both Natalie's contact information, my contact information is in the chat box. We'll reference our YouTube channel a couple of times throughout our presentation. And so where you can find the links for our YouTube channel is also in the chat box. Today, your videos and your audios are muted, so we can't see you or hear you, but we do know you're there. We want this to be as interactive as possible. So as we're going through today's presentation, if you've got questions, we want you to put them in the chat box. Natalie's going to be watching the chat box and she'll read those questions out, and we strive to answer just as many questions as we can during this hour. We're going from 12 to 1. We'll be over by 1 o'clock. So if you're planning your lunch hour or whatever else you've got going on this afternoon, you can plan on that. So Consolidated Planning Group, we are a holistic special needs financial planning firm. I am a mom to 4. I've got 2 kids with special needs that have transitioned into adulthood. And these webinars, we have a webinar series, and we do webinars every week on topics related to special needs planning, and a variety of topics that impact our families as it relates to planning for the future. Some of those topics might include guardianship, special needs trust. It might be SSI and Medicaid. It could be what is a letter of intent. Well, there's a whole bunch of topics out there that we do. And the thing is, any topic that we have, there's always, I call them rabbit holes. We have these rabbit holes that we go down that are kind of related and kind of go together. But the truth is, when it comes to planning for special needs, each one of those rabbit holes could have and do have their own webinar, because each of those topics is kind of like this explosion. You start talking about it, and then there's like all these other ifs and buts and rules and things that you got to do and not do to not mess things up. So just know that there is a lot of content out there on our YouTube channel. It is for free. We're not here to sell you anything or anything like that. You can subscribe to the YouTube channel for free, and all that information is out there for free as well. So today we are talking about college planning for special needs families, and this webinar was really born because I would say of the madness that I uncovered when we were doing this with one of my own kids, who, by the way, is graduating in 2 weeks from college. So I'm excited to say success. You know, we are arriving in that department. But whenever I started this journey of looking at college planning and looking at, number one, this topic of college planning, this is madness for even families with neurotypical kids, right? It is confusing, it is convoluted, nothing is the same with each of the universities that you're looking at. But then when you start throwing in kids with disabilities, learning differences, needs for accommodations, and other things like that, there's all things to be considering when it comes to these types of things. So first things first, I want to talk about realistic expectations. And so just know that when I'm talking to all of you, I'm talking to myself as well. As parents, what we do is a lot of times we are comparing our kids. we compare our kids to others. We compare ourselves to others. We compare our other kids to others, and it starts early. It starts really early. When did they walk? When did they talk? When did they first do this? Little Johnny in soccer, whatever. It's always, we're always comparing, the comparing to the Joneses. And so what I want to say is throw that out the window, okay? Let's not compare our kids, whether neurotypical or kids with special needs. Let's not compare them to others. They are where they are. They're not behind. It is what it is. But let's look at the reality of this situation of where your student is and what might be a right path for them. Again, true for neurotypical kids. There are plenty of neurotypical kids that are not ready for higher education upon high school graduation. The fail rate of students that are going to college when they're not ready is pretty high. They go their freshman year, they don't make it, they make the first semester or what have you. And this is also true for kids that are going to higher education that are not prepared academically. The percentage of kids that are going to college that are taking non-credit courses because they have not passed, the exams for reading, writing, and math. So those are other things to think about. So when I'm saying talking about keeping an open mind, what is a good fit? And all of these things that are on the screen now are all options. And they might be a good, viable option for you. It might be a good first step. And think about this as a journey. A lot of our kids with disabilities, first of all, none of our kids' brains are fully formed until they're 26, right? And so when we have, neurodiverse kids that, may have executive functioning issues, they might have processing speed delays, working memory issues, maturity issues. We see some of our ADHD kids that have maturity, that might be 2 to 4 years behind some of their peers. So this is where some of these things might be appropriate. A transition program. Some of our public schools have 18+ programs. There's a lot of transition programs that are outside of the public school that are private. Think about trade school, community college. There's obviously the university degree programs. There are certificates and licenses. There's all kinds of things. And I know a lot of people that have certificates, they have licenses, and they're making, a reasonable wage, considered gainful employment. So think about, where your student is, what are their likes and dislikes, where might they fit, and what are some of these programs that might be a good first step. Maybe, we've got a lot of kids with disabilities that are also gifted and talented. So we're not thinking about any of these things. We're thinking of going straight to the university. We're going to talk about all of those things today. You can think about a reduced course load. The 12 credit hours, basically a full-time course load. What about one course? What if you're not sure? What if you want to dip your toe in the water and see how things are going to go? You could take one course. All of the community colleges and most of the universities have a course. And forgive me for not knowing the title right off the bat, but it's basically how to be a college student 101. How to have good learning, learning skills and what you need to do. It's basically a success initiative for how to be successful in college. So that might be a good first course to dip the toe in. You might consider this as a dual credit course. Maybe you could do this while they're still in high school. You also might consider taking this course as dual credit during the summer prior to them being kind of college bound. So also think about, living at home versus on campus. Does your child make good decisions? Can they live semi-independently in a dorm, or are the wheels going to be completely off the bus? So those are all things that we've got to think about that. Texas Workforce Commission Vocational Rehab, that's another program that, that you guys should be thinking about and talking about. Most of the public schools have a coordinator at the school that's kind of connected that you guys can talk to and learn more about vocational rehab. But this is for kids ages 14 to 22. They have a disability that is an impediment to employment. And this organization is great. They have state and federally funded programs that are available for our kids with disabilities. So if you don't know about this, you've got to check it out. But their goal is to close that gap on those impediments to employment. So one thing that they do is they do some assessments to find out what are those gaps in the impediments to employment. What kind of training or education might your student benefit from to be able to close those gaps? And then they put a plan together, and it's kind of a matter of working the plan. So if you don't know about that, we do have complete webinars on our YouTube channel to check that out. But there's a ton of resources out there. And of course, you may have heard of some other programs out there, PREETs, pre-employment training services, and SEAL, Summer Earn and Learn. So those are all programs that if you're not familiar with, you should make yourself familiar with those programs. So these are some of the post-high school options for special needs day and transition. And these programs are, all over the state. And we have lists of other programs. We don't work for them, they don't work for us. But these are programs that we are aware of, that we know have decent transition programs, day programs, post-high school. So what we want to say is, if you have a kid that's transitioning, they're in high school, have you thought about and have you, decided definitively, I want my child to stay in the public school to age 21 or 22, or I definitively would like my student to leave the public school or private school or homeschool at age 18. But what we're trying to avoid, so if you want them to stay in, those are conversations that you need to have earlier on in your ARD meetings, talking to the school administration and everything as it relates to your student. But what we're trying to avoid here is that there is no plan, that your student is leaving the public school or private school, and there is no plan. They're not going to college. There's not a transition program. They're not going to work. They're not in VR. We want a plan. We want to have a plan, and we want to work our plan, and no plan is necessarily wrong. We've seen a lot of families, so even families, because we have families say, well, what if my child really just even has intellectual disabilities? Clearly, their IQ is below 70. Is there a path for them? And there truly is. There are all kinds of programs out there, and we're going to talk about more and how to find those for your kids that are intellectually disabled. There are, programs for physically disabled. There's all kinds of programs. So maybe it's the autism spectrum, maybe it's Down syndrome. There's any number of diagnoses that there are programs out there for. So don't think that there's no program for your student. Okay. So here, we were kind of talking about kind of success. And again, neurotypical kids, kids with learning disabilities, the 6 trait students with learning disabilities need to succeed. It's self-awareness, proactivity, perseverance, goal setting. They know how to use social support systems, and they have emotional coping strategies. But this is true for our neurotypical students as well. And so sometimes this is where we're talking about, sometimes they're just not ready. But we've seen families that maybe their student wasn't ready at 18. Maybe they weren't ready at 22, but they were ready at 24, and maybe they graduated at 28, okay? It's okay. That's where I'm saying is like this, it's okay to be where you are, and there's not this magic button that they have to graduate at age 22 or exactly 4 years from the time they start this process. So just think about those things. Okay. So I want to talk about the accommodations and offices of disability on the college level. So some of my madness and how this webinar was born is I was utterly shocked and surprised on how every single university and community college is different. I know that sounds dumb, but I just thought that there might be like a universal way that you go about doing this, and all the applications open up at the same time, all the scholarships open up at the same time. Like, there's some copying and pasting going on, like it's just easy. And what I found is it's not. So my first things first, get a spreadsheet. Parents, this is a job that you're going to be partnering with your students, certainly with your students with disabilities, as well as your neurotypical kids. This is not easy. So understanding and kind of thinking about, so when we're thinking about what school do we want to go to, what makes the most sense? A lot of our families with kids with disabilities, they want their kids to stay in state. They're not wanting them to be that far away out of state. Everybody has different opinions on that. But all of the applications and the deadlines and the programs are a little bit different when they open up, when they close, how many seats or spaces do they have available. And that is also true for the Offices of Disability on the college level. So all colleges and universities have something called the Office of Disability. They might call it ODS, they might have abbreviations for it, but in short, it's the Office of Disability. And this is the office that you are going to communicate as a parent, as a student who needs accommodations on the college or university level. And so what I would say when we were kind of looking at some of the programs that were out there, the first thing that we did is we narrowed the schools down to the degree program or again, certificate or license program that you're interested in. We narrowed it down by location. And then the third thing is basically the Office of Disability. Are they good or are they not? Because some of them aren't. And if you know that your student needs accommodations, then you want your student to go to a school that has a wonderful Office of Disability. So that's the first things first. Do your homework, research it, look at the website, see what other parents have to say about that. So here's what you need to know, is a lot of our kids have accommodations. These are accommodations that they have in public school or private school or anywhere else or homeschool. They don't just automatically transfer. It's not magic. They do not automatically transfer to the college level. So while you can give the college a copy of the IEP that you have in place for your student, or 504 or whatever you have in place, they don't have to accept it. And most of them, and this is where it gets confusing again, all of them have a different set of rules and rule book that they're looking out of what they require to get accommodations on the college or university level. So you want to research these requirements early, know what they are, be prepared, submit an application for accommodations, and submit whatever proof of disability or whatever testing that you need to submit to get these accommodations. Typically, these universities and colleges are asking for updated testing in the last 3 to 5 years. What kind of testing am I talking about? This could be neuropsych testing. It could be learning disability testing. Those are some examples. So usually 3 to 5 years, they've been a little bit more flexible with this over the past couple of years because of the pandemic. And a lot of them have changed their policies. So it is important, if you've checked on this before, you're going somewhere else, or it's been a while, to check again, because a lot of their rules and things have changed. That is also true for the SAT and the ACT. Okay, so first of all, there are accommodations available for the SAT and the ACT, and you have to go to those test websites yourself, and in the chat box, in their little search bar, put in disability or disability accommodations, and it'll take you to a page where you can download their form. They have a request form that needs to be signed by a physician to request accommodations. So again, they're not going to take your IEP. It's going to have to be signed off by a physician, and they're going to need some kind of documented proof of the disability or need for the accommodation. So what kind of accommodations can you get for the SAT and the ACT? You could get 50% more time, 100% more time. You could get testing in a non-distracted area, because a lot of times this testing in the ACT, SAT, it's a giant room. There might be 300 kids in there testing. Maybe your kid is distracted. Maybe they have test anxiety. Maybe there's a million other things going on, and maybe they need to be in a controlled environment. So usually they'll kind of test in the counselor's office or something like that. There is also testing over a couple of days. So as opposed to doing all the testing in one day, which the neurotypical kids, you could have it spread over a couple of days if we've got kids with fatigue or other issues going on. So just know that that's that, and you want to request those early. But again, let's not put our kids through the SAT and the ACT unless it's necessary. So if your students are going in through the community college, okay, they don't need to take the SAT or the ACT. It's not necessary. It's unnecessary stress to put them through. And also, because of the pandemic, some good things were born out of the pandemic. Because of the pandemic, many schools have made the SAT and the ACT a choice. Not all of them have eliminated the SAT or ACT requirement, but this is, again, where every school is different. So you're going to have to go on their website, look at it, see what they're saying. So it could be a choice, it could be required, it could be one or the other, it could be required for both. But the community college definitively does not require this. So if your kid is going into a certificate program, a license program, there are some programs we'll talk about in a minute that might be like, it might be like a food service program, like they're learning, or the hospitality industry and things like that. They're not going to need that. Just plan this early, get the testing if your testing hasn't been updated in a long time. If you're already working with VR, some of this testing may have been done when they were doing the assessment of your child. This testing may have been done. People ask, does the public school do this testing? Usually the answer is no. There's some testing that the public school does. Sometimes your local intellectual disability authority will do some of this testing. And of course, this testing is something that you can do private pay, typically through your psychologist or psychiatrist office. Your psychologist or psychiatrist might not do the testing themselves, but they typically know folks that do and refer out to places that do testing. And then also what I would like to say is sometimes this testing can be pretty expensive. I would say $2,500 to $5,000 is not shocking on this testing. Depending on the kid's diagnosis will depend on if the testing is covered. So I had one kid, I could get this testing covered with our health insurance. And I had another kid that I couldn't, okay? So it just kind of depends on what their diagnosis is and what has happened as a result of those diagnoses. When we're thinking about the school, and I need to add this to the slide, but FERPA, put that in the chat box for us, Natalie, FERPA, FERPA. This is a form that is necessary on the college level if you want the school to interact with you as a parent. The FERPA is something that you need signed by your student. Another thing that you need to know is some programs do not accept kids that the parents have guardianship of. So in the example, we've got families that are having guardianship, partial guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney. There's all kinds of alternatives when it comes to guardianship, but some school programs will not accept your student if you have full guardianship of them. Some will with partial guardianship, but just know that. So the power of attorney, and when I'm asking about the power of attorney, I just like to mention this for all of our students. Okay, so this is our neurotypical kids too. It's a good idea to have a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney when you send your kids off to college. They turn 18, something happens. If they have a mental health crisis and end up in the hospital, if there's an accident, they end up anywhere, nobody's telling you anything if you don't have that healthcare power of attorney. And you can make it to where it's going to go, that is going to go in place. Like if they become incapacitated, but we have definitely heard, I had one client, this child was in the apartment fire up there at Texas State. I've had another client whose child had a mental health crisis and was taken by ambulance to a mental health facility for which they wouldn't tell them where they were. Not only could they not find out what was going on, they wouldn't even tell them where they were. So imagine trying to find out all the mental health facilities in the city that your kid is in. So don't let that happen to you. I'm not a fan of do-it-yourself legal work. We refer out to attorneys all the time for that. But these kind of documents, you probably could download them. Again, we're happy to refer, but healthcare power of attorney and power of attorney is an important document to have. As it relates to work, and this is going to be the Workforce Commission, Workforce Solutions, they're going to have a lot more information on this kind of stuff. Reasonable accommodation is required if it doesn't pose undue hardship. There are such things with the Department of Labor called registered apprenticeships. If you're thinking that your child might go to work, check out registered apprenticeships for individuals with disabilities. There's some cool ones out there. So just be aware that there is a lot of resources out there. So whether you're going to community college, whether you're going to a transition program or a university, or you just want to have them go to work for a little while, maybe they're going to go to work for a little while, maybe they get a job coach, maybe they grow up a little bit, maybe maturity wise they're not there yet, just know that there's totally great options out here. Okay, so in-state educational options post-high school. These are some of the programs. This is not an all-inclusive list of all of the programs that are in the state of Texas. Some of these programs are on here because they have specific programs geared towards individual with intellectual disability or autism. Some of these programs are listed on here because we know that they do a good job with working with individuals with disability, or they have a good disability office. So just research these programs and see. And some of these certificate programs are very tailored to a specific industry. How does your child's brain work? Are they, do we have kids on the autism spectrum that have engineer brains? A lot of families do. And so there are a lot of programs out there that are geared towards those engineer brains. And we have a lot of clients with kids on the autism spectrum that have been very successful. Yes, they're lacking in the social side of things, but some of them are just freaky smart, and they just need to be put on to something that they're like passionate about, that's lighting their brain up. So check these programs out, but check them out early. When I'm saying check them out early, some of them only have 4 seats for next year or 6 seats for next year. It's not like this continuous unlimited enrollment. So this is where that spreadsheet I was talking about comes in handy, of knowing when does the application open up, when does it close, how many seats do they have, what do I have to do when to get what I want, right? And so if you're applying to 4 different programs that only have 4 seats, which I recommend applying to different programs if you're only applying to some of these small programs, so that way you land somewhere, okay? How are we on questions so far, Natalie? Are we okay?
Yes, we're good. We don't have any questions so far.
Okay,
I
perfect.
went ahead and I put a link for the definition of FERPA in the chat box.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, so the Texas Success Initiative, we were talking about the ACT and the SAT. The TSI, I've always, they call it, most people just drop the A for the assessment, but the TSI assessment is necessary for colleges in the state of Texas, both the community college and the university. So basically, this is a test, an entrance exam for college to say if your students can qualify for credit classes or for non-credit classes. They're going to test reading, writing, and math. And there are all kinds of free practice assessments for the TSI. You can just Google that. Most of the community colleges are doing the TSI, so you can schedule one through them. A lot of them have free links to practice for the TSI. So I had my kids doing the free one, and then I bought one. And I think that the paid for one was a little bit more expensive. It had a little bit more information and a little bit more help. But the free ones were good too. So just check it out. There's ones to buy, ones for free. You can find the free ones online. And if you can't find the free ones online, your community college or your university can direct you to a resource for that, because other people definitely have that need as well. So the next thing that we have, I want to talk about the out-of-state educational options for students. So Think College is a place where you can really look. There's like 309 colleges. So if you are a family that are considering, sending your child out of state, this is where you're going to want to look for that, because in this webinar, we didn't really put all the information in there for for other out-of-state programs, but you can research them here. And then we also have a consultant that we've partnered with in the past, and she is focused on finding that right fit for your child with a disability. Here she is, Jody Glau. And she's really done her research. She's toured all these programs all across the United States. She's really adept at working with you and working with your student to find the right fit. So we have a lot of families that are basically wanting to turn this over to somebody else. We talk about, Natalie and I were talking about all the full-time jobs that people have, you know, being married, being a mom, a nurse, a caregiver, a teacher, there's so many things that we're doing. So if you have the resources to hire a consultant, this lady is good. She is not in the state of Texas, but she does all across the United States. Like I said, she's toured these programs, and I think that you will be well pleased with her if you are wanting to hire a consultant. So then we have another program, the College Living Experience. And so this is basically individualized post-secondary guidance and instruction to academics and career development, independent living skills, and social development. So if you are interested, College Living Experience, they do have programs across the United States, not just in Texas. There's one in Texas. But basically, you pay for the College Living Experience. Your students live there. They go to the community college, maybe Blinn, maybe A&M, but they're learning those independent living skills. It's kind of a cool program. The kids have community. They have mentors and other people to rely on, so they're relying on you a little bit less. So this is a cool program, but you would have the expense of the college and the College Living Experience. So for some families, that might be a little too much. So then we have Bloom Consulting, the Campus Connection Program. Bloom Consulting, if you're taking notes, this is you just want to check out their website. They have a really good website. They do a lot of stuff. They often have partnered. They do have a contract with vocational rehab. So sometimes you may have been connected to Bloom Consulting through VR because they do something called vocational evaluations. So if you're wondering what those impediments to work are, you can hire Bloom Consulting directly, or sometimes you get Bloom through your affiliation with vocational rehab. But this particular program, so Bloom also has a residential living home for individuals with disabilities in the greater Houston area. But they have this Campus Connection program, and they're working with universities all across the United States, not just in Texas. They are domiciled in Texas, but they have a cool program at Sam Houston State University, and it's basically a wraparound program. It's a mentorship program. They're really working with your student to connect them and empower them to problem solve and kind of be moving into that adulthood and possessing those skills that they need to possess to be successful in a university setting. So just like I said, I think it's worth it to just check out their website. So we've got, and this is probably not accurate for this area, but we talked about workforce solutions. We've talked about, briefly, we talked about summer earn and learn. We talked about the pre-ETS, they call it, ETS, pre-employment training services. So we've just got some slides in here to talk a little bit more about their programs, how to sign up for VR. And again, a lot of your campuses, your public schools, at the high school, they have a coordinator connected to your school. I would say I've heard people say negative things in the past. They've had bad luck, or they had a bad coordinator, or they couldn't get anything done, or things fell apart during the pandemic. And all of those things, have had truth to them. But what I've seen is they're working really hard. I've got one of my kids in the program. Things are working really hard. They've hired more coordinators. They have community liaisons, and they know what the shortcomings were, and they've worked really hard to close the gap on those. So if you had a bad experience in the past, give them another try, because there are a lot of great resources that are available for your loved one with an impediment to employment. So you should definitely check it out. So let's see. So for now, what we're going to do is we're going to go to what about funding, okay? And so in this part, we're going to kind of go through a lot of it relatively quickly. Today's meeting is being recorded, and you will get a copy of today's slides and the recording. So after today's meeting, everybody's going to get a copy of the slides, which will have the links, so you don't need to write them all down. You'll just get it. So what about money? What about the money? How do we pay for all of this? So first things first, one of the things that I hear all the time is we make way too much money. We're not qualifying for anything. We're not doing the FAFSA because we don't qualify. So my answer is you should do the FAFSA, and you should do the FAFSA every year that your student is in college. The FAFSA opens up October 1st every year. And the reason that you should do it, so while you may make too much money, most people do, to get financial aid, there are a lot of the scholarships require that you do the FAFSA. So if you don't do the FAFSA, you're automatically disqualifying your student for any of those scholarships that are out there. So when you're thinking about scholarships, this is another spreadsheet for all of you that have so much time on your hands. This is another spreadsheet because scholarships, when it comes down to scholarships, they're all created differently. And what most families think, and this is, a big myth, this is like a big epiphany for me when I was doing this with my student. Most families think that when your student is a senior in high school, that on Christmas break, that you're going to do your scholarship applications, or you're going to do your college applications, or they're going to do their essays. So first things first, good advice is Google what the essay requirements are for the next year. There's usually 3 essay prompts. I suggest so it's junior year, that your kids just left their junior year, they're getting ready to leave their junior year, they're going into their senior year. That summer is when they should start writing their essays. Look at what the essay prompts are, have them write their essays, have them get them reviewed, and have them ready. Because senior year comes, and senior year is busy and it is stressful. And if your kids wait to do their essays until their senior year, there's going to be a lot of tears at your house. There's going to be tears at your house during the summer when you're making them do the essay. But there's going to be more tears and more people upset when senior year starts and everybody's back to school. It's going to be chaos. So essays are required oftentimes for scholarships. Essays are often required, and this is when you're doing your spreadsheet for these schools, what is required? They require an application. Do they require all 3 essays or just one? If you do all 3 of the essays, then you can go in and edit it really quickly for what the school wants. It's just done. It's done and done. And we just update it and we send it off instead of trying to rewrite the essay over and over again. So good advice. Summer of after they've completed their junior year, they're going into their senior year. That summer is when you should do those essays. The second thing that you need to know is the big fat lie is that you should do your scholarship applications on Christmas break. So what I found out, which was pretty shocking, is that a lot of these scholarships close December 1st. So some of them are December 1st, some of them are December 15th. And then you've got some that are later in the spring, February or April, but a lot of them open in October or November. Some of them open during the summer, and they flat out close December 1st. So know your deadlines early, plan on that, and think about that. Okay, so the next thing, so 529 college savings plans, 529 ABLE accounts, both can pay for college. So if you have an ABLE account is an account that won't be used against them for SSI and Medicaid purposes, but you can pay out of an ABLE account. It grows tax-free. If it can be construed as achieving a better life for an individual with disability, you can pay for it out of an ABLE account. So if you have an ABLE account, you can pay for college, you can pay for tutoring, an iPhone, a vacation, a car. It's unlimited what you can pay for the individual with a disability out of an ABLE account. Of course, you've got your 529 college savings plan. Of course, you can pay for college out of that. And again, this is another thing, and I am not saying slam dunk, no matter what, VR pays for college or they pay for education or things like that. But they might be able to provide support if it's in line with the goals established in the plan for the individual to find competitive employment. And they do have a calculator, an income calculator, where they calculate your family's income to see if there would be a portion of the family would have to cover, or if the family wouldn't cover it all. So just know that there might be support in that as well, if it's moving them towards finding competitive employment. If they need to get a license, they need to get a certificate, they need to get a degree for that end goal, then it might be covered. Okay, so talking about some scholarships, I always just like to mention that if your child was adopted through the state of Texas, or through the foster program or things like that, your kid goes to school for free to state colleges in the state of Texas. So there is a tuition waiver. Most families know about it, but if they talked to you about it 18 years ago, you might have forgot. So I always just like to mention that. So when you're thinking of colleges, of scholarships, I'm just going to go back for a second. Think of community-based, school-based, disability, disease-based, sport, music, or band-based. These are all things that you can be thinking about. It could be volunteer, philanthropic-based, like if your student has volunteered, had a lot of meaningful volunteer work. Also think about asking your life specialist at the, how they have like the, at the children's hospitals, they always have like a life specialist, or, they're kind of like basically the counselors, or they'll come in, the child life specialist is what I'm thinking about. Spit it out, Allison. But they, a lot of times they have lists of scholarships. Has your kid had cancer? Do they have heart issues? Is it autism? Whatever, but a lot of times those child life specialists, they have access to lists, or they know where to get them, or they can point you in the right direction. Don't forget to ask them. They're valuable resources. And just know that your neurotypical kids, there are even scholarships out there for your neurotypical kids, because they have a sibling with special needs. So there's a ton out there. So what I would say is to choose wisely. For me, I don't have enough hours in the day. So applying for some of these scholarships are ridiculous in what they're asking for. They're asking for this 3-page essay or whatever. Some scholarships are giving $20,000. Some scholarships are giving $500, and sometimes the scholarship for $20,000 and the scholarship for $500 are asking for the same thing. Ridiculous. I don't have time for that. $500 pays for one book. $20,000 is getting pretty close to paying for 1 year, right? So for me as a parent, if you're busy, like I know you are, I had to streamline. I researched scholarships early. I knew what the deadlines were. What's in it for us? How much money do we get? Does it renew every year? Is it big? Is it worth our time? And what do we have to do to get this scholarship? And also keep in mind that some of these scholarships are pretty rare. People don't know about it. The bigger the scholarship, the more people know, the less likely that you're going to get it. So if you find some of these rare scholarships out there, you might get it just because not that many people applied. So just be aware of that. The Terry Scholarship is one that is near and dear to my heart. It's an awesome scholarship, and all of these universities on the right-hand side have the Terry Foundation Scholarship. The Terry Foundation has been around since 1987. It's been the largest provider of private scholarships for Texas high school graduates all across the U.S., and it is for Texas students only, and these universities. So it's basically what they're looking at is leadership potential and character, scholastic record and ability, financial need. So when we were looking at the beginning, we were looking 7th, 8th grade, 9th grade. What are we going to do? Okay, so we're not going to be in the top 5% of the class. We don't do band, and we don't do sports, and we don't do all these other things that you can get a scholarship for. So how are we going to get a scholarship? And so what I learned is we got to get these kids volunteering. What I learned is our kids have a story. Our kids with a disability, they have a powerful story. What have they overcome? Have they what have they worked through and, risen above from? What is their story? And on top of their story of whatever their diagnoses are or whatever they've had to overcome themselves, what have they had to overcome as a family? How do you tell that powerful story? Is it divorce? Did your house flood in Harvey? Has there been a hurricane? Have they lost a parent? Do they have a parent that's terminally ill? Whatever your story is, be able to tell a powerful story, but show that your child has risen above that and they're giving back to their community. So I'm talking about meaningful volunteerism, not fake, I volunteer at my church, right? I'm not saying that you don't volunteer at your church. I'm just saying that college admissions folks are hip to, I volunteer at my church, and that's a big fat lie. So think about the organizations that you could get your student volunteering with on a regular basis to where they have a lot of community service and hours. Is it Autism Speaks? We had in our area, we had Hope for Three. We had the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society. We had Teen Huddle, which was, basically an autism group that gave reprieve for families with kids with autism. There's all kinds of organizations. There's Dream League and other things. Meaningful volunteerism with a couple of groups. And what happens when you do this? Number one, the directors of these programs are going to write a glowing recommendation for your student when these applications are requiring recommendation letters. So instead of getting the pastor of the church or their pediatrician to write a recommendation letter, these are real. These are, we love this kid, and here's why we love this kid, and this is what the kid has done for us, and he's going places, and she's going places. But so this is basically fully funded. So you have opportunities of all of these. So you don't just apply for the Terry Foundation Scholarship once. You can apply for it at as many of these universities that you're applying to. So you can increase your chances of getting this. But this is basically a fully funded scholarship for 4 years. So basically what we did as a family, we applied for a lot of scholarships. We had our spreadsheet, we had our plan, and we worked our plan. And my daughter that is graduating from college now, she got like 12 scholarships. But what ended up happening is she got this Terry Foundation scholarship and she was fully funded. And so we ended up, there were like 3 other scholarships, 2 or 3 other small ones that we kept. And we gave all of the other scholarships back she got because she was fully funded. So what I just want to say is some families think it's not worth it. And I'm just going to tell you, it is worth it. We totally had our plan and we totally worked our plan. Now, listen, if you've already saved up $100,000 for your kids' college and you seriously don't care about this, so I would say it's not worth it. If you just want to spend your money, or mom or dad or grandma or grandpa are going to fund your kids' college and you don't want to waste your time with this, then don't waste your time in applying for scholarships. But what I'm saying is, with a disciplined approach, with a plan, with your spreadsheet, and researching and knowing your deadlines early, you truly can make a huge dent, if not get your college fully paid for your students. So just think about it. So here are just some links out there. These are all these different scholarships out there that we've heard about. Basically, you can think of any disease specific, any disease that or diagnosis or disability that you have, that your child has, look for a scholarship out there. And we've got a lot of links here. So we're not going to go one by one of all of these, but there's just a whole bunch out here for you to research to see if these are ones that should be on your spreadsheet or not. The rodeo, Rodeo Houston, most of the rodeos across the state of Texas also have some scholarships. I know the Rodeo Houston scholarships have some big ones. 4-H, pretty competitive. So if your kid isn't really top 5 or top 10, I don't want to call them a waste, but anyway, it's very competitive, the 4-H scholarships, but they're pretty big, 20 grand. A lot of the rodeo scholarships are 20 grand. So just think about some of those as well. So it just we're just going through a whole bunch of links here. One of the things that we want you to think about too is there are a lot of books out there. Colleges That Change Lives. This is a great book. There may be an updated version out there, but it's a great book. There are a lot of colleges out there that totally work with neurodiverse. They're a great place, and they're a great like family place. They might be a little bit further away. They're in Texas, but they might be further away, but they're good. And then also this guide to colleges may be another one that you want to check out, in addition to the website I mentioned earlier, thinkcollege.net. For that, I have reached basically the end of our presentation for today. I'm happy to entertain any questions that you guys have. I hope that this has been informative. When we're doing these webinars, we're typically talking about a variety of topics, but if you're here and you're thinking about higher education for your student, and your student has a disability, these are some things that should be on your special needs planning radar. We're able to help. We're nationally certified as Social Security advisors, members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. So Consolidated Planning Group is really able to help you on a variety of levels. A lot of families come to us and they say, I know I need to start planning, but I don't know where to start. I don't know how much or what I need to set aside for the future as far as a future care cost estimate. If you have a loved one that has care needs for the rest of their life, that maybe they will not live totally independently, maybe semi-independently, we can help with those future care cost estimates. We have webinars on every single one of these topics. The Texas waivers and interest list, these are things that's a kind of a buzzword. Everybody asks if your kid's on the list. Some people don't even know what you're talking about. It's like the list, the magic list. Anyway, Texas Medicaid waivers. So there is an interest list, HCS, Texas Home Living, Community First Choice. There's MDCP, there's Star Plus. There's a variety of waivers. And there is a long waiting list in the state of Texas. Some suggest that it's over 15 years long. So you do want to learn how, if your kid is not on the list, you want to learn how to put them on the list. If they are on the list, you want to know where they are on the list. And the point of these waivers, just so you know, because a lot of times people are signing up for those lists and they really don't even know what the list is or what it does. But these waivers are designed to waive off some of the cost of care for your loved one with a disability and keep them in home and community-based services. So what we know is home and community-based services are best as opposed to institutional settings. And so these are designed to waive off the cost of care. Some of these waivers pay for attendance services, respite hours. They might pay for therapy services and things like that. So just know about that. SSI, SSDI, understanding the differences and knowing when to apply is important. We have entire webinars on SSI and Medicaid, and this is important for you. I don't care how much money you make. I don't care how much money you have saved up. Your kids, when they turn 18, their qualification for SSI and Medicaid is based off of their assets, not yours. So it's this magic little flip of a button that happens when they turn 18. Most families don't even know that it happens because they applied once and they got denied and they were mad and they were never planning on applying again because it's such a pain. But you got to have money in the right buckets. Your kids should not have more than $2,000 in their name outside of an ABLE account or a special needs trust. So check out those webinars, know about that. And again, we're nationally certified Social Security advisors. We can help you on your journey on that, help you know what to do and when to do it. But once they turn 18, it's based off of their assets and income, not yours. And it's, are they disabled? Do they have a qualifying disability? And are they indigent? Do they fit that criteria? So beneficiary designations, one thing that is a big deal in our community is a lot of families, when it comes to beneficiaries of life insurance or investment accounts, what happens is they list their spouse as a beneficiary, and then they say, if I die and my spouse is dead and gone, then that's easy. I'm going to split the money between my children. Okay, well, that's wrong. And it's easy to fix, and you can fix it for free. You don't have to hire us to fix it. You can call and just get a change of beneficiary form. First things first, we never want to name minor children as beneficiary, because if you do, the money, if you die and your kids are minors, the money sits in trust until they turn 18. And when they turn 18, they give them all the money. Okay, so that's a bad idea, and there's other ways to fix that. We never want to name our loved one with a disability as a direct beneficiary. So if we've got little Johnny Smith, we're not going to name Johnny Smith as a beneficiary on anything we've got. And the reason we don't want to do that is because if you die, Johnny Smith gets more than $2,000 in his name, and he can't just disinherit it, okay? If he's left it and it's left in his name, it's going to make him disqualify for SSI and Medicaid. So we want to leave that to the Special Needs Trust for the benefit of Johnny Smith. So that way he maintains his eligibility for SSI and Medicaid. So these are just little nuances that you got to know. Well, you don't even have to know it. If you know how to reach out to us, we'll help you with that. But we talk about having money in the right buckets and things for you to not do, to not mess up your loved one with special needs, and make sure that you're maximizing the benefits and resources that are available for your loved one. Another big thing that we got to talk about, we have just a few minutes left, child support directed to a first-party special needs trust. Any families that are in a divorce situation and you're receiving child support, and that child support is slated to continue post age 18. Sometimes child support continues post age 18 if they're still in school. And then we see a lot of families that have child support that continue indefinitely for a loved one that has a disability. Well, guess what? That child support, once they turn 18, is going to be considered income to your loved one with a disability in the eyes of the Social Security Administration for SSI. So in order for that not to be counted against them, that child support needs to be redirected to a first-party special needs trust. You're going to have to work with a special needs attorney to set up that first-party special needs trust, and they're going to have to get a court order to direct that child support to the special needs trust. So ideally, if you're in an agreeable situation with the ex, sometimes people are, sometimes they aren't. If everybody agrees on it, then you can just get the attorney to draw it up and then get it signed off on by a judge. If the other party is not in agreement, then it's got to go to court, right? And so that's more expensive. We have a question?
We have one question, yes. We have guardianship of our child. Is there a program that does not allow a child under guardianship to be accepted? Is there a way around that rule? Maybe giving limited POA to the school, specifically interested in Texas A&M Aggie Achieve program. They require a child not to be under guardianship. We don't want to give up guardianship.
So that is a good question. And what I will say to that is that every program is a little bit different, and some of them absolutely will not take your student if you don't have guardianship. But there are such things as partial guardianship. And so I would ask these programs, will you take partial guardianship? So if you have partial guardianship, maybe over their medical affairs, maybe over their educational affairs, that could be partial guardianship. So partial guardianship retains some rights. You know, your loved one will retain some rights, and you will retain some rights. And then, of course, there is a power of attorney, the healthcare power of attorney, the supported decision-making agreement. And some families have that in place, but some attorneys won't even do that. So if your child has an intellectual disability, an IQ below 70, and they couldn't sign a power of attorney and actually know what they're signing, it's questionable. So I say you've got to check with the programs, check with the, you know, as far as the guardianship, the partial guardianship, and see if they'll allow the partial guardianship on that. Some of the programs do, some of the programs absolutely do not. So we don't have like a specific list of which ones do and which ones don't, but it's important to ask that question. And, you know, if I, you know, spent $3,000 to $5,000 getting guardianship, I'm probably not going to throw it all away because I want to go to a program, right? And if you got guardianship and the guardianship was granted, it was granted because it was needed, because in the state of Texas, it is the least restrictive, most appropriate for the individual with a disability. So if guardianship was not appropriate for your loved one, it would not have been approved. So it's kind of a push-pull, and you'll have to decide on that. I'm sorry I don't have a better answer than that. It is hard, and if it were me, I probably wouldn't let the guardianship go. I'd probably find a plan B as far as the school is concerned. Do we have another question?
No,
Okay,
she said thank
we're
you for your
okay.
input. Yes.
Okay. Guardianship, power of attorney, healthcare power of attorney, supported decision making. Those are all things that are available in the state of Texas. Again, I recommend the power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney for all of our adult kids, 18 and 18 up. And depending on if you're going to get guardianship or partial guardianship, you don't need a power of attorney and healthcare power of attorney if you're getting guardianship or partial guardianship. But these are all things that I want you to think about. And I also want you to think about this for yourself and your parents. Do you have aging parents? Do they have a healthcare power of attorney in place? Do they have a power of attorney in place? Some of our parents have lots of money, but they don't have a power of attorney in place. So if they become incapacitated, we can't even pay for their care out of their accounts, right? So is that in place? And don't wait till our loved ones have a stroke or a heart attack or become incapacitated to realize, oh snap, we do not have the healthcare power of attorney in place. And it can be a real issue, and we've seen that be an issue for families in the past. So anyway, spend a little bit more time because we wrapped up our presentation a little bit earlier on these topics. All of these topics are on our YouTube channel. We'll have upcoming webinars on all of these topics, and we'll go deeper and wider with you on those. This is how you can reach us. We always have free personalized consultations. We want to know you better and understand what your situation is, what you're working on, and partner with you any way that we can. So this QR code will take you to a link where you can schedule a free personalized consultation if you have additional questions or things that you want to run by us. So it's certainly been my pleasure partnering with you, Natalie, today. Do we have any additional questions before we close?
We have one more. How about the supported decision-making agreement? What does it cover?
So some would argue, okay, so there's different schools of thought on the supported decision-making. Some would argue that it's not worth the paper that it's written on, because as a parent, don't I just help my kids make decisions anyway? Do I need a document for that? I normally do this. I've been doing this forever. So basically the supported decision-making agreement basically says that your student agrees to let you help them make decisions. Ultimately, the decision is theirs. They make the decision, but ultimately they want to be able to consult with you to make the decisions. Excuse me. This usually goes alongside with a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney. This is especially important if you're not, going to have guardianship or partial guardianship and your student is turning 18 and going to still be in the public school. So if you want to be participating in their ARDS or any of these other, their educational, direction, you could actually be pushed out of that. Most districts are pretty great and they pretty much work with you. I've seen some be horrible, but most of them are great. So the supported decision-making agreement. So let's say you're going to the doctor and they're discussing treatment options. They're discussing those options with your loved one. Your loved one can consult with you about, good, bad, and indifferent and what they might do. And then your loved one makes the decision ultimately. So a power of attorney and a healthcare power of attorney, most healthcare powers of attorney become activated when your loved one becomes incapacitated, but a power of attorney could be activated now or upon incapacitation. So, and for us, again, there's no right or wrong here. For us, ours is activated now as far as the power of attorney. So that way, if I need to call on behalf of my daughter on certain things, then I can just handle it. Some stuff is complicated. When it comes to insurance, when it comes to claims, you got Medicaid, Medicare, regular insurance, all these claims, some stuff is just complicated. And so for me, sometimes I just handle it. I don't even want her to have to deal with it. It's ridiculous, right? So that's where our power of attorney comes into play, or billing on I actually called on one this morning that we have the healthcare, the power of attorney in place and just a bill. And we're covering those things. I don't even want her to deal with it. So I was able to call on that. So it's to each his own. Some people say, I don't want to do that at all. I don't think the document's necessary, and to each his own. It just depends on your level your students' level and your level of comfort and what level of care and service that you're still providing for your loved one. And I think it's a very individual choice, and there's not necessarily a right or wrong answer.
Thank you. Thanks for that.
So thanks so much. We're not hearing you again, Natalie. It's been a pleasure chatting with you guys today. I hope this information was helpful. We look forward to partnering with you again, Natalie, in the future. And don't forget to check out our YouTube channel. You can see those past webinars out there. Again, it's all free. You can subscribe for free. Our Facebook page will have upcoming webinars and other things. We do webinars every single week on a variety of topics. So if you can kind of check out the ones that might be relevant to you and your journey. So thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to chatting with you guys again soon.
Thank you, Allison, for all the information. It was great. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Everyone
Take
for
care.
joining.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.